What is going on, everybody? Been a diehard Pistons fan since '03 and eager to see this team getting back to playing winning basketball. In today's video, I want to discuss out of the core four Pistons, who has the most to prove heading into the 2024-25 season. Now, none of these things that I discuss or say could be an indictment on any of these players. I just want to talk about what the entire NBA and the franchise as a whole would view these players as if they don't improve this upcoming season. Worst case scenario type of conversations are never fun to have, but as a realist, they are important to have. So let's just get right into it, and we'll order it from least approve to most approve, which should be obvious, starting with Cade Cunningham with the least approve out of the core four Pistons. Why does Cade not have as much to prove as these other guys? A few simple reasons. One, he already got paid. He's set himself, that's good to go. Two, even if he doesn't improve, he's already an all-star caliber player, just not on an all-star caliber team. The dude averaged 22 points and 7 assists last year. Even if he doesn't take a leap, which I think he will for the record, that's really not a bad player. If Cade doesn't improve much at all heading into this upcoming season, it's far from the end of the world. He really doesn't have to prove anything at this point to me, but to the rest of the world, I think that he does need to take that step to prove to them who he is as a player. But realistically, let's say the version of Cade we got at 22 years old ends up being what we get for Cade for the rest of time. That's still a damn good player. You won't have conversations about, man, maybe we need to not play Cade. Maybe we need to send Cade to the bench. The question at that point, if he doesn't improve, just becomes, all right, we need to get a second star in here that can kind of be more of a A1 type of player while Cade takes a secondary role. Do I think any of that's going to happen? No, I think Cade's going to take a giant leap, and we've talked about it in depth on this channel. But if he doesn't, I think he's going to be fine either way. Heading into Jalen Duren at number 2. Now, the order of these next three might surprise some people because there's a lot of people out there who says, oh, we need to see defense from Duren this year or else we're out on him. If Duren doesn't improve the defense this year, we need to trade him. Here's how I'm looking at this. He was 20 years old last season, averaged 14 points, was like third in the league in rebounds. He improved his free throw shooting greatly. Even if he takes a sidestep this year in his 21-year-old season, he is still a fantastic player for a 21-year-old. I would be far from giving up on him if he does not take a huge jump this upcoming year. I know a lot of people want to snap their fingers and have these guys turn into all-stars, especially considering the amount of losing that we've done over the past couple of years. But if Duren kind of has a sidestep year where he just does more of what he did last year and shows only the slightest little bit of improvement, I still would be far from out on him because it's easy to forget the guy to this day is 20 years old. He won't be 21 until November. If you have a 21-year-old starting center on your roster putting up 14 points per game, 12 rebounds per game, shooting 70% from the free throw line or better, last year he was at 79%, what more could you ask for? I guess you could ask for a little bit of defensive improvement, but at 21 years old, you could just say, let's work on that next year. Let's wait until next year. I think that Duren has more borrowed time than a lot of these guys. Even though everybody in the core four is 22 or 23 or younger, he's even younger than the rest of them. He's younger than Ausar Thompson despite being drafted a year earlier. The dude has all the time in the world to make improvements. So I think this year, he doesn't need to prove to everybody that he's instantly going to be an all-star center. I think that he will take a big jump, but even if he doesn't, he's right where he needs to be for a 21-year-old player, and he hasn't even turned 21 yet, so I'm not worried about that whatsoever. Next up is Jaden Ivey, and now this order of the last two might surprise a lot of people, but here's something to consider, right? Last year, Jaden Ivey actually improved on a few things across the board. His true shooting percentage was up. He still averaged 15.5 points per game, 4 assists per game. The turnovers were down a little bit. His turnover to assist ratio looked a little bit better. At 21 years old for his last season, it wasn't an improvement, but it wasn't a big regression either, where it maybe could have been, especially considering how different his role was from his rookie year. Now, if Jaden Ivey does exactly what he did last year, I think you're going to have a lot of people start talking about him as maybe more of a six-man spark plug type of player rather than the potential of an all-star that he had when he came out in from the draft. But the way I look at it is if he doesn't have a huge jump this year, which I think he will have a jump, but if he doesn't, he's still a really good player and he's still really young. So I don't feel crazy tight about giving up on Jaden Ivey if he can't take a huge leap this year. But I do think he's a little bit more towards that territory than someone like Duren or Cade because he's not quite as young as Duren and he definitely hasn't shown the consistency and decision making that Cade has. Jaden Ivey has something in his toolkit that as of right now, I don't think he'll be losing anytime soon, and that's his speed. So I think that there's so much to work with there. I think that he will take a huge jump, but even if he doesn't, I still think that he can be an effective player in this NBA as he is, and I'm really not too worried about his future at all. And last on the list, the person who I personally think has the most to prove is Ausar Thompson. And I know a lot of people might disagree with that, but here's my thought process on why I think he has the most to prove out of anybody in the core four. Number one, he's as old as Jaden Ivey. He's older than Duren, even though he was drafted the year after both of those guys. And Ausar has maybe the highest ceiling out of everybody on this team. The best version of Ausar is like a Kawhi Leonard, right? The best version of Ausar is a player that is one of the most athletic dudes in the NBA, a two-way threat, not just a two-way threat, an all defensive caliber type of defender, but offensively he has to figure it out. And if he doesn't figure it out offensively, he's going to be closer to a Tony Allen with bounce than he is a Kawhi Leonard. And the difference between Tony Allen with bounce and Kawhi Leonard is the difference between an MVP caliber player and a guy that might not get that many minutes on a good playoff team, especially in today's NBA. I think that with Ausar Thompson, he doesn't need to show us that he now all of a sudden is a 38% three-point shooter and an 85% free throw shooter. What he needs to show us is just an improvement in those two categories, along with an improvement in overall offensive ability with dribbling, passing, playmaking, all of that type of stuff, particularly the shooting and particularly the handle. There was plenty of times last year where I felt like he just dribbled the ball way too high. It kind of looked sloppy in a way that when he was making some sort of moves in transition and things like that, you'd almost hold your breath, and sometimes good things would even happen. But it just didn't look like he had a tight handle, and obviously the jump shot was not anywhere near where it needs to be, with him averaging 18% from three and only 59% from the free throw line. It's just really hard to succeed in the league today with those type of shooting splits as a wing. So I just think that he has a lot to prove. The thing about it is, though, is if he can touch those things up, if he can take a 10% leap in three-point percentage, a 10% leap in free throw percentage, which might sound like a lot, but considering where he's starting from based on his last year's stats, it's not that crazy. If he can do that, he instantly becomes more valuable than anybody on this team, not named Cade Cunningham. And I really don't want to pit these guys against each other or anything like that. That is not the goal of this whatsoever. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a quick overview on how comfortable I am with these guys and what I want to see and what I expect. If Ausar can even just improve the shooting just this much and tighten up the handle just this much, the sky is so high, and that's why I think that he just has the most to prove out of everybody on this roster. I'll catch up with y'all soon.